What if, all of a sudden, everything you spent years building was taken away from you? What if the people you loved the most turned their backs on you at the moment you needed them the most? And what if, instead of drowning in pain, you decided to start over from scratch and build something so grand that those who once underestimated you would deeply regret it? This is my story. At my lowest point, I was just a woman, abandoned, penniless, with no support and no hope. But today, I own an empire. And my family. They only realized it when it was too late. If you have ever felt left behind, betrayed, or underestimated, this story is for you. Stay until the end and find out how I turned my pain into power. It was a cold autumn morning. The wind cut through my skin, seeping through the thin fabric of my worn-out coat. I pulled the collar up against my neck, trying in vain to contain the shiver that came not only from the weather but from the emptiness settling inside me. Beside me, a small suitcase. Everything I had left fit inside it. Behind me, the door of my former home shut. The same house where I had raised my children, prepared countless dinners, endured silent tears, and stored smiles that now felt like they belonged to another life. But that house was no longer mine. There was no place for me there anymore. My husband, Michael, had left me for a younger woman. My children, Edward and Lily, the ones I carried, fed, and cared for, looked at me as if I were a burden. As if I were an inconvenience. You have nowhere to go. You can't stay here, Mom. Edward said, avoiding my gaze. I held my breath, waiting for him to take it back, hoping this was some cruel joke. But the silence that followed was more painful than any words. Lily sighed, impatiently. We don't have space for you. It's already hard enough for us. Dad said you can stay in a hotel for a few days. She said it without emotion, like someone repeating a rehearsed line. My eyes filled with tears, but I didn't let them fall. I knew that if even a single tear escaped, I wouldn't be able to stop them. The door closed with a hollow click. I stood there, outside, with nothing left. My heart pounded in my chest, my mind spinning in despair. Memories of years of sacrifice played before my eyes like a cruel, relentless film. I remembered the sleepless nights, holding Edward when he had a high fever, the stories I read to Lily when she was afraid of the dark. I remembered the meals I prepared with love, waiting for Michael to come home for dinner, only to see him shrug and walk away without a word. I remembered every time I ignored the signs, the betrayals, the dismissiveness, believing that if I just kept trying, things would eventually go back to the way they were. But the truth was, they never would. They had never truly been good for me. There, on that cold sidewalk, with only a suitcase and nothing else, reality hit me. I was disposable to them. I had been used, drained of every last bit of energy, until they no longer needed me. And now, alone, penniless, homeless, without even a single embrace, was I just supposed to disappear? No. A small flame ignited within me. Faint, barely there, but real. I still existed. I was still alive. And somehow, I would start over. My name is Lauren, and for my entire life, I was the woman everyone expected me to be. I was a devoted wife, a present mother, and a woman who always put the needs of others before my own. Since I was young, I had been taught that a woman's role was to care, serve, and sacrifice. My marriage to Michael seemed like a fairy tale at first, a charming man, promises of a comfortable life, and dreams we would build together. But, over time, he revealed himself to be a controlling man. In the beginning, he said he wanted to protect me. That working outside the home was exhausting, that I didn't need to go through that. That our family would function better if I took care of the house and children while he provided for us financially. I agreed because, at the time, I believed it would make me loved and respected. But as the years passed, I realized that this arrangement was nothing more than a prison. Michael controlled everything, especially the finances. I couldn't buy anything without asking for permission. He decided when and where we would go out, which friends I could have, and when I voiced my concerns, he would laugh. "Lauren, you don't understand anything about money. You depend on me for everything. You should be more grateful." And at first, I was. I convinced myself that he knew what was best for me. I thought that love meant compromising. But, little by little, my identity began to disappear. I no longer recognized myself. I had become nothing more than a reflection of everyone else's needs. My children grew up watching this. Edward and Lily saw their father belittle me, and little by little, they learned to do the same. When I tried to set boundaries, they looked at me with frustration. "Mom, you worry too much. Dad always takes care of everything," they would say. To them, I was just Mom, the person who handled everything, who served, who existed only to take care of them. They never asked if I was happy, if I wanted something more for myself. But the truth was, I didn't know who I was without them. Until life forced me to find out. The betrayal came in the most cruel and humiliating way. Michael had bought an apartment for his mistress, a woman I once considered a friend. I discovered it through an email left open on the computer. A purchase contract, signed, dated 2 months prior. Address, price, photos. A breathtaking view from the balcony of the new apartment he had bought for her. For her. My chest tightened, and a wave of nausea washed over me. My fingers trembled as I picked up the phone and dialed his number. My voice was shaky, a knot forming in my throat, suffocating me. But I needed to hear it from him. "Michael, what is this?" The silence on the other end was deafening. "What?" he asked, his voice laced with irritation. "This apartment. Who is this woman?" My voice cracked, and the air seemed to leave my lungs. He sighed, as if the conversation exhausted him. "Lauren, don't make a scene. You know our marriage ended a long time ago." My heart stopped. So he knew. And he had done nothing. He never tried to fix things, never said a word. He had simply decided that I no longer mattered. I know, Michael." My voice wavered, and the tears came despite my best efforts to hold them back. "I gave you 20 years of my life. How could you do this to me? Lauren, you never worked. Everything we have is mine. You have nowhere to go. It's best if you accept this and leave without making trouble." I felt as if the ground had vanished beneath me. The man who once promised me love now looked at me with indifference. As if I were an old piece of furniture he had decided to throw away. My knees weakened, but I refused to collapse. I swallowed back my sobs. Not out of pride, but because, in that moment, I realized crying wouldn't change a thing. The worst part came when my children arrived. "Mom, maybe this is for the best. Dad always paid for everything. You never really did anything." Edward said with a shrug. "Never did anything?" I whispered, unable to believe what I was hearing. "I dedicated my entire life to you. Do you think clean clothes magically appear? That warm meals land on the table by some miracle? I spent years sacrificing myself to take care of you." Lily crossed her arms, impatient. "Mom, let's be rational. You never worked, you have no way to support yourself. Dad said he'll give you some money to rent a small apartment. You don't need more than that." That was the final stab. A small apartment? I let out a bitter laugh. "You're treating me like a burden. Like a problem that can be solved with money." "It's not like that, Mom," Edward murmured, avoiding my eyes. "Then what is it?" My voice came out stronger than I expected. "Because all I hear is that you want me to disappear." The silence that followed confirmed everything. They spoke as if they were doing me a favor. As if my worth was reduced to whatever Michael decided I was owed. I grabbed my suitcase and walked out without looking back. I wanted someone to call my name. To hear, "Mom, wait." But all I heard was the sound of the door closing behind me. That night, I slept in my car. The cold bit into my skin, but it didn't hurt nearly as much as the betrayal. I spent the night staring at the ceiling, replaying every decision I had made in my life, every time I stayed silent, every time I allowed myself to be erased. And the next morning, I made the decision that would change my life. I would never be a ghost again. The suitcase sat on the passenger seat, and I gripped the steering wheel with frozen hands. I had nowhere to go. There were no friends to call, no family to take me in. For a fleeting moment, I was tempted to turn around. Maybe beg for more time. Maybe say I would accept anything just to have a roof over my head. But then I remembered Michael's words. The look of disdain in Edward and Lily's eyes. And I realized, there was no going back. I started the car and drove aimlessly. For hours, I just kept moving forward until the fuel gauge forced me to stop. I pulled over and stared at the darkness of the empty road. I was truly alone. The tears I had been holding back began to fall. I cried until my body ached. I cried for the wasted years, for my own naivety, for the fear of what was to come. Then, between sobs, I opened the shoebox in my glove compartment. My little secret. For years, I had stashed away small amounts of money, never imagining that one day I would depend on it to survive. I counted the bills. Just over $300. That was all I had. I grabbed my phone and searched for women's shelters. There was one a few streets away. I called. A tired voice answered. "We're full, but, come by. We'll see what we can do." The building was old but clean. The smell of disinfectant mixed with the aroma of fresh coffee. Women sat on worn-out couches, some holding children, others just staring at nothing. I never imagined I would end up here. A woman with gray-streaked hair and a firm posture approached me. Her gaze was sharp, but behind it, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time: understanding. "Are you okay?" Her voice was deep but kind. I couldn't respond. I just nodded and swallowed back my tears. "I'm Claudia. Come with me." She led me to a small office and gestured toward a chair. "Would you like some tea?" she asked. I nodded. My hands trembled. She studied me for a moment before sitting across from me. "You don't have to tell me anything right now. I just want you to know you're safe. You can stay here for a few days until we figure something out." I wanted to thank her, but all I could do was lower my head and whisper. "I don't know what to do." Claudia took a deep breath. "First, you're going to rest. Then, you're going to learn how to make money. Fast." Her words were blunt, with no room for doubt. My heart pounded. "But how?" "I've never done anything," I repeated, echoing the same words my children had told me. Claudia chuckled, a short laugh, full of irony. "Never done anything?" She raised an eyebrow. "You cooked for your family for 20 years, didn't you? You took care of a home. Raised children. Lauren, you have no idea what you're capable of." It was the first time someone had made me think differently. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to believe. But believing was only the first step. The road ahead would be long. I started small. At the shelter, as the women talked about their problems, I listened. Many of them had children and no money to buy something as simple as a snack. That was when I remembered my mother's cake recipe, the one that used to fill my house with the comforting smell of home. If there was one thing I knew how to do well, it was that. The next morning, with the little money I had left, I bought ingredients and baked a tray of cake. I cut it into slices and, with a knot in my stomach, started offering it to the women at the shelter. One of them, an elderly lady with tired eyes, took a bite. Her face lit up. "Oh my, this reminds me of my childhood," she said with a nostalgic smile. She bought a slice. Then another woman did the same. The next day, I baked more. Slowly, word spread. One afternoon, a staff member at the shelter pulled me aside. "Lauren, I work at a cafe nearby. The owner is always looking for new things to sell. Would you like to give it a try?" she suggested. I hesitated. The thought of walking into a cafe and offering my cakes was terrifying. But deep down, I knew I had to try. That afternoon, with a plate of samples in my hands, I stepped into the cafe. My legs were shaking. "Hi, I make homemade cakes. Would you like to try?" My voice faltered, but the owner, a middle-aged man, took a bite without hesitation. He chewed slowly, evaluating the taste. My heart pounded. "This is good. Really good." He looked at me and smiled. "Bring me 10 tomorrow. Let's see if they sell." 10 cakes. I barely had enough money left for ingredients, but I used what little I had earned from the first sales. The next day, I returned to the cafe with fresh cakes. Within a few hours, they were sold out. At that moment, I knew I had found a way forward. I spent countless nights studying entrepreneurship, learning how to sell online. I used an old phone to take photos of my cakes and posted them in Facebook groups. Orders started coming in. Small bakeries became interested. Every cent I made, I reinvested. I rented a small space to produce more. Then a second one. Then a third. The days were exhausting. I woke up before sunrise to prepare orders. I learned how to run a business on my own, how to deal with customers, suppliers. There were moments of despair, times when the money wasn't enough, when fear whispered that I wouldn't make it. But I kept going. 5 years later, my little homemade cake business had become a franchise. My name was known. My story was shared. What had started as a means of survival had become an empire. I was no longer the Lauren who once begged to stay. I was Lauren, the woman who built an empire. And this time, no one could take it from me. When my story aired on television, Michael and my children came looking for me. Michael was broke. His once unshakable company had crumbled under debt. He had lost everything. The man who once looked at me with arrogance now stood before me, defeated, his shoulders slumped, his eyes hollow with exhaustion and despair. He found me at the grand opening of another one of my stores. He hesitated as he walked through the bustling crowd, his presence out of place among the smiling customers and cheerful employees. The expensive cologne he once wore had been replaced by a cheap aftershave. "Lauren," his voice was a hoarse whisper, heavy with something that almost resembled regret. "I made a mistake. I was a fool. Can we try again? You were always the woman of my life." I looked at him for a moment. The Michael I had once known was gone. There was no power in his voice, no trace of the man who used to command attention with his presence. But there was no true remorse either, only desperation. I smiled, just a little. Not out of joy, but because I realized I felt absolutely nothing for him. No anger, no sadness. Just a calm certainty that this man no longer had any control over me. "Michael," I took a deep breath. "I was the woman of your life. But you were never the man of mine." His eyes widened, and he swallowed hard. Before he could respond, I turned my back and walked away. A few hours later, Edward and Lily arrived. I saw them hesitate at the door, unsure whether to step inside. It was strange seeing them there, dressed well, but without the same self-assurance they once carried. They approached cautiously, and Edward was the first to speak. "Mom, can we talk?" His voice was softer, stripped of the condescension he once used with me. "Now I'm your mother." I raised an eyebrow. "I thought I never did anything for you." He dropped his gaze, silent. Lily sighed, then forced a smile, as if it could erase years of disdain. "Mom, we miss you. We saw your interview, and we realized we were wrong." She reached out, touching my arm gently, but I stepped back. "Can't we start over?" I let out a dry laugh. "Start over?" I crossed my arms. "You're not here because you miss me. You're here because you want a piece of what I built." "That's not true," Edward protested. "Isn't it?" I met his eyes, unflinching. "You never called me before. Never once checked if I was okay. But now that I'm successful, suddenly you want to reconnect. Don't insult me." Silence. The truth hung in the air, undeniable. I took a deep breath. When I looked at them again, I no longer saw the ungrateful children who had cast me aside. I saw two flawed people carrying their own regrets. "You hurt me more than you can imagine," my voice was firm, but free of resentment. "But I am your mother. I always will be." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Can we try to fix this?" she asked, her voice breaking. I hesitated. The pain was still there. But as I looked at them, I realized I no longer needed revenge. I had already won. "Time will tell," I said. "But understand this, love and respect can't be bought. If you want to be in my life, you'll have to prove you deserve it." They nodded silently. "Now, live with the choices you made. And if you want a place in my life, you'll have to build it from the ground up," I said before walking away. This time, it wasn't a final goodbye. But it wasn't a promise either. I would no longer carry anyone. If they wanted to be in my life, they would have to walk beside me. Today, I travel the world. I do what I love. I live for myself. As I walk through unfamiliar streets, I feel the gentle breeze against my face. The voices around me speak languages that once felt distant, but now they make me feel alive. I had always wanted to travel, always wanted to explore. But for years, I was told that wasn't for me. That my place was at home, taking care of everything except myself. Now, I sit at a cafe by the Seine in Paris, watching life unfold around me. A couple walks by, hand in hand. Children laugh in the distance. The aroma of fresh pastries fills the air. My phone vibrates. It's a message from my team, informing me that a new branch of my franchise has opened today. I smile. From that first cake I sold at the shelter, something unimaginable was born. My name is now displayed in dozens of stores. My brand, which started with simple homemade cakes sold in small plastic containers, has grown into a network of sophisticated patisseries. My products are stocked in supermarkets, cafes, and even served at luxury events. I have a team of dedicated employees, many of them women who, like me, rebuilt their lives after hardship. They know that my business is not just about cakes, it's about resilience, about overcoming, about empowerment. My offices are housed in an elegant building in the heart of the city, where major decisions are made every day. But my favorite part is still visiting the kitchens of my stores, talking to the employees, and seeing the joy in the eyes of customers tasting something that was once just a distant dream. I remember the days when I had to borrow money just to buy ingredients. When I baked cakes in a shelter's kitchen, not knowing if I would be able to sell them the next day. Now, I am invited to speak at conferences, appear in interviews, and share my journey on television. What once was a painful wound is now a source of inspiration for other women to never give up on themselves. But what moves me the most is not the money or the recognition. It's the freedom. I get to choose where I want to be. I get to decide where I'll go tomorrow. I get to say yes to life in my own way. I am no longer defined by anyone but myself. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that it is never too late to start over. Life doesn't end when you lose everything. It begins when you decide to fight. And I chose to win. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another story of resilience and transformation. And remember, it's never too late to start over. One step can change everything. Share this story with someone who needs the motivation to move forward.